Good afternoon. It's our second off season together, and our staff has been able to accomplish a lot. And obviously, we have a lot of work left to do before the draft, but excited to do it. I'd like to start off by thanking a lot of people that do the lion's share of the work here to set us up to make great decisions as an organization. Starting off with my executive team, RG, Demetrius, Ryan Munnins, Chismo Parra, Jamal Stevenson, just a great group of guys who set us up to succeed. Our college group led by Mike Charlatan, our pro group led by Chris Blanco, our football quantitative methods group led by Scott Kuhn, our football information system group led by Luke Burson. They do a lot of great work. And football administration, Emily, who's a rising star in this league, Caitlin Zarecki, who's an unsung hero in football operations. There's a lot of people in this building that I think their permission slips are going to be coming one day, and once the league sees what I get to see every day. But excited about what we've been able to put together. Obviously Kevin and Rob, who continue to collaborate with me, and just so fortunate to have them here and help us guide this team and come up with strategies to really find players to fit systems and schemes that we think it'll take to succeed in the NFL over the long term.
Yeah, it's been a really cool process in year two. Kwesi's done an incredible job with all of the staff that he just mentioned, continues to do a remarkable job incorporating our coaching staff and especially with some of the new additions to the coaching staff, really building a process that we can not only collaborate but really have real results that we hope come from the work that we're putting in. And then obviously, just on a side note, very excited for our off-season program to get kicked off and running this coming Monday. We had a very successful off-season program in year one a year ago, and really excited to just get our players back. I've told you guys this before, just how much the energy level skyrockets when we get our roster back in the building. And we've had a lot of players in-house throughout the off-season. Kind of chose to stay local and work out here, so it's been great seeing those guys. But getting the full group back will be really cool. So with that, we'll turn it over to you guys.
Are the workouts mandatory?
No, the off-season program rules have not changed. Still, the only mandatory part of the off-season will be our mini camp, which will be right around that mid-June time before we cut these guys free to get some well-earned rest before we get going in training camp. But a voluntary program had really, really strong attendance a year ago, and the expectation is we will have the same again this year.
Kwesi, last year you were just sort of getting to know all the people in the building. I guess how much different is the process this year from last year after you know kind of everyone's strengths and how to work together with them?
I think you said it perfectly. You really get to learn people's strengths. What's their superpower? We talk about that a lot. And how do I combine all of the information we get? Because every person in this building is an information source. And how do we combine that to get the best decision for the Vikings? So to your point, this past year I've really learned people's strengths and also help them communicate with me. I think certain times, I can leave things unsaid, thinking that people, who've been with me for 9 years or whatever, like Demetrius has. But a lot of times I have to fill in the blanks, and he's a great resource to me to help me do that. But that's really been our process this past year.
For you guys, year two doing this, what is the biggest difference you've noticed in how you approach this one as opposed to the first one together last year?
The fire hose isn't going as much as it was last year. That was a tough transition. Just so many things coming at you, learning people's names and learning a building, where to park, all those things. Take away those things, and you get to focus a lot more on football and really putting in the groundwork for your systems and processes. These are things that I put in my GM book, and they're just words on a page at that point. But now they've come to life with input from Kevin, and we built something great. And obviously, it'll always continually get better, and we'll keep improving. But we really like where we're at from our process.
Yeah, I would just add that when we're looking back on a year ago at this time and really trying to teach systems and on the football side, be ready to educate our players on that from day one in the offseason program. It took away from your ability to truly dial in on the draft. And I know we're going to have a new defensive system, but as far as our offensive staff goes, I've seen just some really a really cool process come together where, whether it's Wes Phillips or Brian Angelico or some of our offensive coaches really diving in with Kwesi and his staff and myself, and we're also, the two of us, able to spend a lot more time together, just in discussions, watching tape, continuing to learn how each of us view the certain positions, and then obviously the most important thing is the role of individual players once they arrive here.
When you come in and you had to change a culture and then you see success, because there might have been people, naysayers, like looking like, okay, here they come in, trying to do all this. You get success, and I think a lot of people around the league took notice and might have even calling you, how did you do it? Now sitting where you are this year after finding that, how does that make you feel?
I don't know that anybody's called me to ask me what we've done.
If they do, don't tell them anything.
Yeah. That's great to hear, obviously, because we're proud of what we've done. But I'll be honest, this started when I sat across the table from this guy the first time we talked, and this is just generally who we are and how we want to conduct business on a day-to-day basis. We think there's a lot of different ways to win a championship. This is just the way we've chosen to do it, the culture we've chosen to build, and the process we've chosen to do. So we're going to do this because this is who we are every day. This isn't something that shows up on a page or whatever. This is just the core tenets of our culture emanate from who we are as people. So that's what we're going to do. And obviously, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't know that anybody necessarily needs to call us and do it our way, because the second the season ends and your season ends, you don't feel very successful. You feel like, as long as you're not the last team standing, you feel like you got to go chase somebody else. And that's kind of been our mindset this offseason.
Kwesi, to what extent do you think you need to address quarterback in this draft? We all know Kirk's contract situation as it stands now. Do you need to do that in advance? Can you push it out? Do you even know for sure that this is, it for Kirk for this, this coming up year?
Can I ask first, you trying to dunk after the NCAA tournament? What happened?
Good enough story. It's ice and being old.
You got to change that story.
Dedicated to truth and objectivity.
Okay. Obviously, and just like I know, quarterback's, the most important position in our sport. And, ultimately, Kevin and I, we these aren't things you just kind of decide in the moment. You have to have plans. You have to have strategies. You have to have different ways of getting to that answer. So we've had these conversations. They're ongoing. There's lots of different avenues in terms of addressing that position. I wouldn't necessarily box us into just one. But, again, we do know that it's the most important position in the sport, and we'll treat it with that kind of importance.
Would you say you're more or less likely to have to come up with a few more draft choices during the draft? I mean, you only have so many picks. I mean, do you need more?
I think everybody focused a lot on the number. First, I'd like to point out that last year we had a pretty big class, right? So we had 10 guys that we drafted play last year. And honestly, I feel like there's this dynamic now with the draft where it's like every Christmas is a new Christmas and you forgot what you got last year type of thing. We've been in the building with a bunch of these guys for a year. And so we talk a lot about ceiling, but we've seen them for a year. We've seen their work habits. We've seen them move up in person. So we're really excited about a Lewis Cine who had the season cut short, or a Caleb Evans who played snaps, or an Andrew Booth and a Brian Asamoah and a Jalen Naylor. There's a lot of people that people don't really know about that we're really excited about in this building. So we think about them. They didn't have to play a lot last year, right? So they're almost part of this draft class, if you think about it in a sense. Assezi, I don't want to leave anybody out. Vidarian, who's in there grinding every day. Just a lot of guys that we're really excited about. And then when you talk about this draft, the numbers. To me, it's not necessarily about the number of picks, it's about the impact of those picks that you have. So if you can find an impact player with your first pick or whatever, you don't have to trade back to get two players who might not add up to that same impact. So we're going to do it the way we've always done it, trying to make decisions to find impactful players that fit our culture and the way we're trying to go about business.
What has your communication been like with Za'Darius, and do you expect him to show up on Monday?
We're ongoing communication with him and his representatives. Like Kevin said, it's voluntary, so those aren't things that we're necessarily concerned with. But, we try and be solutions-oriented here. That's what we'll always talk about, and sometimes those solutions come from different places or whatever. But, he's a great member of our team last year, and we'll keep the conversation ongoing.
What about Dalvin Cook under the same scenario?
Similar, it's voluntary. He doesn't, yeah.
Do you expect him to be on the roster this year?
Again, conversations are always ongoing with him. We're trying to be, solutions oriented, always trying to put the roster together within our constraints, and we'll continue those conversations.
If you knew for sure that he would be on the roster, would you have committed what you committed to Alexander Madison?
I think I think in theory they could exist, and of course, different style of backs. We try, and again, we talk about the systems we're trying to play together. They're different style of backs. They could fit complementary together for sure.
As you look at the quarterbacks, do you feel it's important to have the succession in place for when Kirk is eventually gone?
We talk about that all the time. I don't know that there's one right answer, to be honest. Ideally, you probably would want to have a year to have the person in the building or something like that, but I don't know that that's necessary, and Kev can probably comment after I'm done here. It just depends on the player, depends on all those things. But I will say this, the most important thing we believe in evaluating that position is understanding the different aspects of the game that person succeeds at to give their value. And me and him have to be on the same page as to what that is and how we're going to use that person. That's how you start and give yourself a chance to succeed. Everything else after that, I believe, is secondary.
What was your biggest disappointment about your defense last year?
I think defense is one of those positions. It's tough, right? If you get off the field on that third down, nobody sees those next 5 plays where they might give up yards, and it's good defense and quote unquote maybe not as good defense can change with just a few plays situationally. So, our inability to get those plays, but ultimately, I don't know the cause of those things, right? You don't know in the moment. I think could they be usage or whatever? I don't know the answer to that question, but I will say that we played a lot of good football. We didn't play it maybe at the moment we needed to play, but we played a lot of good football, and there's a lot of people to credit for that. And I take everything personally. So at the end of the year, I try and look at what could I have done better, and we spent the offseason trying to do that.
Coach, you obviously added multiple free agency pieces and especially some big pieces on defense. Wondering if you can just kind of comment on those additions and how it also impacts your view of the roster going into the draft now.
Yeah, I thought in addition to the key free agents we added, I thought it was really impactful to re-sign some of our own guys that we did. But as far as the free agent pieces, you're starting out with Davenport. Kwesi knows this. A lot of times when we start talking about players, as a coach, you reflect, and I reflect when I'm talking to him about your experiences playing against that player, and just he's always struck me as a guy that it just so much potential, still so much football out in front of him, but impactful in the run and the pass game, affecting the edge and really limiting things offenses will try to do against you with his role and his responsibility. He can play for us. Excited to get him in. Byron Murphy, obviously from my experience in the NFC West, and a lot of conversations with a guy like Cooper Kupp. Hey, this guy's tough. This guy's a really good football player, smart, instinctive, does a lot of things both inside and out that can be versatile. So really excited about Byron. Josh Oliver, an element to our team and our tight end room that's really exciting for me. Obviously bringing a solidified presence to blocking on that edge and being a major part in the run game, but also showing some real traits and really all the things that you saw from Josh coming out of San Jose State. Vertical passing game threat, a big body, reliable hands, and a lot of things that pairing him with TJ and some of our other guys in that room get you really excited. TJ and CJ actually get you really excited about how versatile we can be, how in year 2 we can kind of reinvent ourselves while still staying true to our football philosophy. Was really cool. Dean Lowry, I thought, was a big addition just on the interior, a guy that we have quite a bit of experience against. A lot of our coaching staff, whether it's Mike Pettin or Mike Smith, being around him in Green Bay, knowing the makeup, the toughness, what he's going to bring to that front, pairing him with some of the other guys we have. And then Troy Reeder and BP, Brandon Powell, guys I had personal experience being around, knowing what they're going to be from not only a culture fit but really good football players and versatile and adding things to our team this time of year is a really positive thing. But once again, I don't want to go through the whole list, but I thought the ability for us to re-sign all of our, a lot of our guys that we really wanted to, and then, coming off of last year, I wanted to have everybody back. You guys know that, especially in my year one coaching this team and just what we were able to build from a culture standpoint, the leadership, some of those things. But in this day and age, to get the guys back we did, we're excited about a lot of the guys coming back on our roster that will ascend to maybe some new leadership roles to coincide with their impact on the field. All that gets going here in the next few days, and really excited about it.
Kevin, how do you balance wanting an elite quarterback to groom, for when Kirk's done here, versus an impactful player to help a team that won 13 games?
Yeah, I think this kind of coincides with the previous question about ideally you would love to have that person in that role developing behind a great player like Kirk, but I don't think you ever sacrifice, it being the right player. And regardless of the when, the where, the why, the how, you can't sacrifice that because you have to have ultra belief and connection on making that decision because it is such an important decision. But I will say, very excited about Kirk in year two and in this system, and it's been a while since Kirk's been able to say that he gets to come back in the same system he ran previously with the same play caller. I've had a lot of great dialogue with him about ways we're going to look to fine-tune what we did and grow and improve. So that'll be a big part of 2023 for me, not only as the head coach, but play caller and our offensive staff.
Yeah, as you're assessing young quarterbacks, how do you look at guys that maybe play in a system that is different than what the Vikings would run and assess kind of what they did and how it would map out to what you guys do?
Yeah, playing the position, you have to have things and traits that you look for that are the things that you think can carry over. Things like accuracy, things like toughness, things like having the ability to process and see the whole field and, read with your feet and eyes. Those things translate. The guys that sometimes naturally do it tend to jump off the tape, whether they're in spread systems or more pro-style systems. But then you can find it. You can find those subtle snaps where guys do things they may not even know that they were doing in the moment that I think translate. And that's one of the cool things why I put so much into every single year since I've been a coach in this league, really going through a draft evaluation process of the quarterbacks, whether you plan on taking one or not. I think it's important to do. You never know when you're going to get an opportunity to maybe have a need for a player that comes out this year down the line. So I think it's always good to have a starting point of how you viewed the player coming into the NFL, regardless of if that's going to be for you or someone else as they kind of go down the road of their career.
Last year, your first time around in the draft, you had a few extra picks. And you guys did some things on draft night that I just didn't think no team does. You traded within the division. Talk about that approach, and was that a risk opportunity situation, or is that something that you're open to doing all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I try never to box us into what we could potentially do, but you always have to consider the factors of play. One, does this help me improve our team, first and foremost? But you're correct. The best path to the playoffs is winning your division, so you want to help yourself and not help them. I fully understand that, that go-between. The answer is not always simple and clean, but I think if you look at the portfolio of what we did, it executed our plan, and we feel good about it, but ultimately, I have to live with the repercussions of everything I do, and we'll try to work to overcome that. And speaking of last year's class, I want to make sure I mentioned Ty and Assezi and Nick Muse. You remember when we were kids and you called radio stations to give shout-outs? You remember that? Did you ever do that? Yeah, and if you missed a friend, you can't miss a friend on a shout-out. I feel like I missed a couple guys. I want to make sure that I'm on my phone blowing up that I missed some guys because they're really good players. But just to say it again, we're really excited about the young players we've had. We take player development very, very seriously, and that starts on draft day when we have the coaches in the process and, hey, this is how we're going to use this player. This is what we're going to work on him with, and that continues throughout the year. So we're excited about to see players show up in play that you guys don't know about. Obviously, we're the only ones that have really gotten to see them on a day-to-day basis, and we're just excited about them.
Along those lines with the two young corners you drafted last year, what's your assessment, having the information that we don't yet, of the extent that you have a need at cornerback going into this draft, or that you're actually deeper than maybe external people would think?
Yeah, from a pure numbers basis, obviously we're going to add some people there, but we're really excited about Caleb and Andrew. I think they played in spurts last season, and you saw the potential that we saw them on draft day. But again, this sport isn't about flashes or one play; it's about showing consistency over a lot of plays, and that's ultimately the challenge that every young player has. And we're going to help them and to kind of get to the best ability they can. But we're really excited about what they have and what they're coming back with.
And you said that you wanted to have an ultra belief in a quarterback that you'd possibly bring in. Is there a quarterback or quarterbacks in this draft, whether you can get them or not, that you would have that ultra belief in?
Yeah, I think we're still, working through that process collectively as a group. I think there's, going back every year that you've studied the draft, I've been right on guys, I've been wrong on guys. I think sometimes the key is about your process and truly figuring out what matters most to you or to us as an organization. I do think there's a lot to like about this year's class, both, with a lot of the names that are being discussed, as potential high picks, and I think there's good depth in the draft. I think there's going to be some good options, to add depth to your room after the draft as well. It's just tends to be year in and year out. It's never the same, but there's always going to be the guys that progress to becoming, big-time starting quarterbacks in our league. So I use every year as a real process for me to really go back and say, hey, man, I was wrong on that one, right on this one, and really try to figure out the why. And then collectively, can we build some of those hits and misses into our process moving forward to try to go ahead and identify that guy that we do have that belief in.
A couple more questions.
As you guys talk about quarterback for the future, Kirk obviously works well in your system, but the quarterbacks seem to be getting more mobile. Look at Justin Fields, guys that you call running plays for. How do you feel? Like, do you have a prototype quarterback in your head, or does that intrigue you of getting a guy like that?
I think you have traits in your mind, but I think what makes great coaches in this league are guys that can stay true to their football philosophy, but maybe reinvent some of the X's and O's, some of the how you get there, and just make sure that the end product is good football that can sustain. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and I think that's one of the really fun things about it is year in and year out, every year is different. So I think your offensive system, whatever it is at its core is one thing, but the branches of that and the creativity you can use to not only make life easier on the quarterback and the offensive line, that's where you try to make that your starting point. But how are you incorporating your skill players? How are you trying to elevate what guys do well? And will only help your run game, your pass game, and your ability to be great situationally, which I think all offensive systems, regardless of how you try to build it, if you're good, if you're efficient in the run game and you can generate explosives through the marriage of the run and the pass and then be great situationally, to me, that's good offense. How you do that can change, and the details on that are what's fun about doing your job every day, because you're trying to make sure you're putting in your players. If your number one starting point is putting all your players in the best situation to have success, that's coaching in my mind.
Curious for both of you guys, as you look at the wide receivers in this class, it seems like there's a lot of guys who are smaller in stature. I wonder what you guys think about that, maybe the direction of the position and just why that may be and how you guys viewed that that trend maybe.
No, it's a great question. And you're sort of seeing it on the other side of the ball too, the guys that are guarding them. And ultimately, with these things, you don't know if it's noise, if it's a 1-year thing or it's a 3-year trend. And ultimately, time will kind of tell us that. But we have these conversations often in a way that's, obviously we have to have an opinion on it, but we don't think we know more than we know. We're not exactly sure what's going to come through the pipeline. But again, it always goes back to what can they do? How can his system set them up to succeed? And if that's a lighter guy, there's ways to play with those guys. If it's a bigger guy, and I think football will always be that way, where you can use different skill sets as long as the person calling the plays and the person who brings in the building understands that.
When you look at the running backs in the draft, how do you kind of, aside from delving into what you have, how do you kind of judge that position? And do you think that's maybe changed league-wide recently?
You know, I can't really speak so much to the league per se, but you know, for us, every position we do, I hate to be, you know, keep saying the same thing. We just kind of segment it into what happens on the field and what can they do, how can they contribute, and it looks different for every player. Like Alex will contribute differently than Dalvin, and that's okay. And then it goes to Kev. You know, what do we need? How do we want to highlight that player? So really, that's just how it goes. I can't say if it's changed as much in the league. Obviously, you know, I could probably tell you more analytically, more so than how it's been scouted. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Go ahead, Lindsay. Ladies,
We got time for two more.
I was just wondering, I guess for either one of you with Lou, I know there's been some chat about how he's doing well physically and everything like that, but I'm just kind of curious from a character mental makeup standpoint. I mean, I feel like what he went through is a lot for anybody, let alone someone in their rookie year, and just what you've seen from him and how he's approached.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I really am, because I wanted to make note not only of Lewis, but of you know, some multiple players that have been here and continue to progress really well through the offseason. Brian O'Neill, Dalvin Cook, Lewis Seen, Andrew Booth, and Caleb Evans, all guys that had procedures and I think you know, are really taking advantage of you know, what our building has to offer as far as being, you know, in my opinion, the premier place to come and be supported and to help reach your truest and highest potential with some of the resources that we have here, the great people that we have here. And I think from the time that injury happened, being the unique circumstances of being in London, we get Lewis back here, and immediately you feel our entire team, locker room, coaching staff, front office, and obviously the training staff really wrap their arms around Lou. And I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I feel like he felt that right away and really provided him a really unique opportunity to feel at home, feel around his family, in this building and progress day in and day out. And he's attacked it every single day. You see him nowadays, he looks great. He's in great physical shape. He's here every day working. And you can just feel he's hungry because he feels like he's earned the right through all the work he's put in. And I think he's feeling pretty strong and feeling like he's getting back to where he wants to be. And knowing mentally, he never took a day off because he did say, you know, we asked him the question, hey, you know, when you're ready, we want you all in from a meeting standpoint, growing your understanding of not only scheme, but studying offenses and how people run routes and how people try to attack defenses. And he jumped all in on that. So I'm glad you asked that because with that theme kind of carries over to those young guys that did get injured last year, unfortunately, but it makes you that much more excited for where maybe they can make that jump, that big year 1 to year 2 jump.
Did Delvin surprise you with the shoulder surgery deal, or were you guys planning on it?
I know it's something that we had dialogue about, and I thought he did a phenomenal job really managing that throughout the season, as well as our training staff, still being able to be such an impactful player week in and week out, and being, you know, committed to being on the practice field and being ready to go at game time. So, you know, when that dialogue happened and he wanted to get it fixed, I think he was at a place where, you know, he was absolutely something that it was his decision fully, and I think it's going to, you know, be a good one for him.
You guys mentioned kind of different situations that come up throughout the draft process, but on a general level, that having more shots at it in the first 3 rounds, the top 100, having more picks there, how important is that as you go into it to try to maybe increase your chances at finding an impact player in those first few rounds?
Sure. I mean, I guess it's a similar question that was asked earlier, and obviously I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't have preferred more picks. Obviously, that's something that I would. But again, we're going to go back to impact. How do we do it the best? As you get this late in the process, your board gets set. You kind of have a general expectation, and it's a first price auction, so you never know when somebody's going to go, but you have general sense for when that happens, and you just plan from there. You're planning your strategy of attack. Would we rather have this 3 players in this range or this one versus this one? These are just the conversations we're going to keep having, and right up until draft day, and then we're going to go do our thing and see what we end up with.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.